Hiya. So, when is evasion actually self-preservation when it comes to what your horse is doing in its bridle? Now, firstly, can a horse be comfortable in its bit, forward and accepting with a relatively still mouth? Absolutely, yes, it can. But there's just as many, probably more actually, who are far from painting that picture. And I want us to consider that evasion, the word itself, suggests a willing defiance. And that really isn't what a horse is doing when it's not performing as you want it to. So I just want to throw a few thoughts out there. And obviously this is very general because every horse is an individual, even though a lot of them show the same traits. But let's say, for instance, we have a horse who is going behind the contact. Now, you can recognise these horses because their jaw will be set back into the throat area. Their nose will still be on the vertical or ahead of the vertical, but the muscle under the neck will be prominent. That will almost be what the horse is leading with, actually. Now, this, generally speaking, is a horse that is struggling with pressure on the tongue, and it is sucking the tongue back as far as it can, but it's having to cross its jaw slightly in order to do that. And you'll see that it's almost a setting of that area, which makes them very hard and resistant in the hand. Now, often the rider will attempt to correct this by using a stronger leg aid to encourage the horse more forward. However, that simply pushes it more into the area that it's struggling with. And what is often going to be the rebound effect of that is the horse then becomes more resistant to the leg. It may at that point go over bent, but it will usually start resisting the leg to the point of napping and possibly tossing the head up and down, because it's trying to free that, but it's not used to being in a position where the flexion of the pole is allowing relaxation. If we have a horse that is going indeed over bent, and you can see these more because the upper neck muscles are more prominent, there's more wrinkles in the throat area, and you'll see a tension actually in the horse's face, particularly over the eyes. You may even see a bulging over the forehead temporalis muscles here. And you'll tend to see saliva, quite a big build-up thereof. And this is, again, generally speaking, a horse that is now struggling with pressure over the tongue, on the bars of the mouth, and into the roof of the mouth. And the horse can only really do one of two things, right? It can either come back from it and attempt to lean onto it, which horses will often do with pain and pressure, or they'll go right above, which I'll cover in a moment. Now, when a horse is going over bent, again, the rider might try to correct this by using a stronger leg aid and indeed raising the hand. Now, raising the hand is said to raise the horse's head. However, if it is struggling with pressure in the roof of the mouth, depending on the mouthpiece being used, if there is a joint in particular or even a high-ported bit, it's going to actually rotate that bit slightly more, and it's going to come into more contact with the roof of the mouth. The horse can only open its mouth to evade this, and it can only tuck under more, trying to come back from that contact that's irritating there. Now again, this would be called an evasion. Is it evasion or is it self-preservation? Now, horses that tend to go above the bit, where their nose is anything but vertical, sometimes horizontal in very scary circumstances. Once the horse is in that position, the bit is no longer activating in anything that you're going to recognise anyway. It's rolling on the bars of the mouth. It's potentially rolling over the premolars. If there's a joint there, that will drive past the roof of the mouth and start driving into the tongue. And again, because horses lean into pressure, they don't always, because they're not necessarily trained to back away from pressure, they'll lean into it more. As a result of that, you'll see that the horse will open its mouth fully wide. It won't just cross its jaw, it will open fully wide. And once you've done that, you've almost lost control, because the mouth is no longer in a relaxed state. It's open and it's effectively dead to your hand aids. We have to be very aware that whenever that bit is activated, which is most of the time in English riding, the horse is going to respond. It's going to react. For every action, there is a reaction. But is it evasion? Is it willful denial of your control? Is it a horse that's plotting against you? Sometimes it is, I grant you. But generally speaking, is it a horse that's plotting against you? Is it one that's, busy plotting as you trot around the menage, saying, no, I'm not going to listen to her, I'm not going to listen to her? Or is it actually an animal that's trying to work to the best of its ability while having its tongue squeezed, maybe the cheeks pushed onto the teeth, maybe a joint going into the roof of the mouth, painfully so? Is it just trying to make this issue more bearable so that it can actually listen to what its rider wants? I think it's worth bearing in mind that generally speaking, horses want to work with you. They want the line of least resistance. Again, I have even owned exceptions to that rule. But generally speaking, they want an easy life. We all want an easy life, right? They're never working against you because they hate you. They're trying to defend the very sensitive areas of their mouth. And many continue to compete at a very high level, jumping top level at show jumping, huge jumps, even racehorses. And yet they're having to cope with this in their mouth. They're not working with that is in their mouth. And I always wonder how much more potential those horses would have if they were in a more comfortable mouthpiece, or indeed bitless altogether. Again, I know that's not always possible, but we do owe it to our horses to stop believing that what they're showing is willful defiance, when they're doing their level best to do what we want, but they've got all this discomfort, possibly pain, to endure. The horse can only ever, like any animal, show us what it's feeling in the ways that it has available. And if it is a game of self-preservation, maybe that's why some people have such a battle with their horses all the time. It's not evasion, it's self-preservation.